Let's talk about SAT transitions questions. For some of you, when you see an SAT transitions question, your heart jumps for joy because you know this is going to be a question you can definitely get right. For others of you, when you see an SAT transitions question, you just give up on life. But the truth is, there's a strategy you can use for any transitions question that will make it significantly easier. I'm also pretty confident that anybody who uses the strategy shown in this video will improve their accuracy on these questions a lot. Because trust me, transition questions are not where you want to be losing points on the SAT. There are much harder reading questions you'll end up seeing, and those are the stuff you want to be losing points on, not transitions. Here on the screen we have a bunch of different transitions problems. We're going to go through all of them, but first let me kind of explain to you the theory behind transitions problems. You see, transition questions are naturally significantly harder than many other question types on the SAT. The reason why is because transition words, we typically use these in our daily language to understand what we're talking about, and they're like a pretty significant part. If I say, I went to the store today, and I also lost $1 million, that gives a different kind of vibe than if I say, I went to the store today, unfortunately, I lost $1 million. The first one sounds almost wrong, it sounds almost weird. You see, that's how important transition words are. And that's why choosing them can be so difficult, because they have such a big role in the sentence, so without them it's kind of confusing what the sentence is even saying in the first place. So whenever you're reading a transitions problem, you have to really picture in your mind what is happening. I say this for a lot of different reading problems on the SAT, but for transition problems, it's even more important than for other ones on the SAT. At the start of the week, Zara told everyone she was entering Sigma grindset mode for exams and even deleted TikTok from her phone. Blank, as soon as her friend dropped a new Skibbity toilet edit in the group chat, Zara's screen time blasted off again and her chemistry notes sat untouched for another hour. So in this first sentence, we can imagine Zara here, and she's like getting super locked in. She's like holding this pencil, let's just say, I don't know why I drew it at this angle, but she's holding this pencil and like she's trying to study all day, study hours now. She even deleted TikToks, TikTok is out of there now. And so that's really what's happening in the first part. But in the second part, they say that her friend basically just distracted her. Her friend was like here, and she sent her, I guess, reel, and now it's like screwed up everything. Now she's on her phone again, and now she's not doing homework at all. Now I know that seemed very complicated, but you can also just use this process in your mind whenever you go through a problem like this. I like to tell people you should be basically imagining as if the passage was a novel, and you're trying to understand every single detail so you can picture clearly what's happening in the novel in your mind. It's pretty clear that in the first sentence, Zara's trying to do one thing, in the second sentence, she basically gets sidetracked and gets forced to do a completely different thing. So, however makes the most sense, because however is a word that means that the second sentence essentially contradicts or subverts what you would have expected to happen based off the first sentence. Let's try this one. For years, the school's custodial staff kept the halls spotless, fixing broken desks and cleaning up after every spilled drink. But most students barely noticed. They were too busy scrolling memes and Skibbity edits between classes. Blank, in 2024, the Student Council finally organized a Custodian Appreciation Day, complete with posters, gift cards, and a shout out at the pep rally. So in the first sentence, we're imagining all these different custodians, they're cleaning everything. Meanwhile, the students are out here on their TikTok brain rot and not paying attention at all. They're really ungrateful students. But then, as a result of this, the school council finally decided enough is enough. Let's actually appreciate these people with one day. Is one day enough to appreciate somebody for a job they're doing every single day of the year that they get no appreciation for? Probably not, but at least they tried to do something nice. This is where we get to another really important part of transition questions, and that's making a prediction. It's really easy just to read the sentence and then look at the choices and then just kind of gaslight yourself into thinking that one is correct when it really clearly is not. It's a lot easier to select the right answer when you're actually predicting the answer before you even look at the choices in the first place. So what I tell students is basically before you even look at the choices, kind of like imagine like they're not even there. Just like pretend like they're completely invisible for a second. And then just think to yourself, what would make sense to go in the blank up here? Based off of what I said, it sounds like probably it would be something like as a result, or maybe it would just be like later on in 2024. Yeah, later on probably works, because I guess they're not really saying that it's a result of the students barely noticing. They just said that the council ended up changing their mind on this and they decided to appreciate them finally. So yeah, I'm looking for something like either as a result or something like later on. Now your job is to find the choice that best matches your prediction. Similarly, okay, that doesn't work. Then, okay, that probably works. Lastly, okay, that doesn't really work either because it's not like we're listing a bunch of stuff. For example, no, it's not an example of the first sentence. So yeah, then must be the answer. And you notice that was actually like pretty simple because I actually predicted the answer before even looking at this. But now if you're visualizing and predicting, the other big thing that can mess up your ability to get these questions right is not knowing what the transition words mean in the first place. So I have this chart here that basically shows all the different categories that transition words can fall into. I have a Quizlet in the description of this video that can test you on the different stuff in this chart, but you can just take a brief look at it for now. The main things you need to focus on are the contradiction ones, the cause and effect ones, and the specification ones. I find these to be kind of the most understandable ones out of these words. Contradictions are transition words that basically just mean that the first sentence contradicts with the second sentence. However, nonetheless, cause and effect means that the first sentence basically causes the second sentence. The sun was out, therefore it was hot as frick. In specification, it basically provides an example of what was happening in the previous sentence. Many animals have developed unique ways to survive the cold. For example, the Arctic fox has a thick multi-layered coat of fur and can lower its heart rate to conserve energy. Specifically, for example, to demonstrate. In your mind, when you make your prediction, it should basically fall into one of these different categories. And then once you actually select the answer, it should just be an answer choice that matches the category as well. Now we also have restating. This means the second sentence basically provides a different way of describing what was in the previous sentence. You can see that here. Emphasis. The second sentence emphasizes some points, like with the word indeed or in fact. Sequencing. The second sentence occurs just after the first sentence. It's not really too complicated. Then afterward. Agreement. This is kind of weird, but it should kind of make sense when you see it. The second sentence basically agrees with the first sentence in some way or explains a similar idea. So if I say similarly or likewise, you can tell that I'm like talking about something different, but it has some kind of thing in common with the first sentence for sure. And then finally have another idea. If the second sentence just adds a completely new idea that doesn't necessarily agree with the first sentence or disagree with it, it just is a completely different idea. So you can say something like in addition, moreover, furthermore. None of these means that the first idea is like the same as the second one, it just provides a completely new thing. The teacher posted detailed explanations for every quiz question on the class website and encouraged students to review them after each test. So I'm imagining in my mind, okay, the teacher is out here, they're putting all the questions on the quiz after each test, so now the students can review them very easily. Blank, the students who actually used those explanations made far fewer repeated mistakes and saw their scores rise over the semester. So I'm thinking it's going to be something like as a result. Like the teacher did this, and then as a result of using it, the students ended up scoring better on upcoming exams. Meanwhile, okay, that doesn't really make sense because we're saying that it would have to happen first. The first sentence has to lead to the second sentence, so it doesn't really work. As a result, okay, yeah, that basically matches it perfectly, but let's just look at the other ones. In contrast, okay, no, definitely not. We're not contrasting anything with each other. And then finally, for example, okay, yeah, that kind of works, but not really because it's like first thing leads to the second thing, so B is the right answer. The new study center offers free tutoring in math and science during lunch and after school. Okay, so that's free tutoring. Blank, it also lets students borrow graphing calculators and laptops during study sessions so they can finish assignments on site. So this kind of gives me the kind of vibe, it's like they're just saying two different things that this study center offers. They both offer the free tutoring, but they also let students borrow stuff like calculators and also laptops. And so they're two things, they kind of agree with each other, but it's also just two separate topics. So we're definitely imagining like it's going to be either an agreement thing or another idea. The only one that matches that is moreover. All the other ones are completely different categories. Small decisions can quickly reshape a student's schedule. Okay, so it's saying that like if I have certain amount of time per the day, if I add a new thing in here, it's gonna like make too much time and it's gonna like overflow basically. Agreeing to just one more club meeting often pushes homework so late that it cuts into sleep. So the second sentence is essentially providing an example of the first sentence, one of those providing example ones. For example, yep, that works. Trying a new recipe can be stressful, especially when the ingredients are unfamiliar and the instructions seem overly complicated. So they're saying that, okay, making new food is really hard. The process often teaches home cooks new techniques and flavor combinations they never would have discovered otherwise. So at first they're saying something bad about trying a new recipe, then they're saying something good about it. So it basically implies that there's like some kind of contradiction with the two, so nevertheless falls into that category. The town council introduced stricter regulations on single-use plastics and invested in more accessible recycling stations across the community. Okay, so this is a bit more complicated than some of the other ones, but it's like, okay, the town council, they're putting money into plastic stuff. Okay, I guess this represents plastic for some reason. And they also are recycling, so it's like reduce, reuse, that triangle thing or whatever. Blank, local cleanup groups reported less litter along the riverbanks in the neighborhood parks. Okay, so if you're recycling more and putting more regulations on plastic, that's going to lead to less litter. So we're trying to find something that basically means that, like cause and effect essentially. Consequently works perfectly. So I'm sure you're imagining now that once you actually start doing the strategy for each problem, it becomes significantly easier and significantly faster to get through these problems. Like I'm going through these really just like rapid fire speed at this point. And that's because I'm using the strategy for every problem, and this makes it just so much simpler. Now this may have seemed like unbelievably easy, but if you're struggling with this at all, check the link in the description to join my School community where you can find a Quizlet list showcasing all these different words and what they mean. This will make these questions significantly easier, and then when you're going ahead and practicing questions, it'll just make it faster and simpler as well. I'll see you guys there. Let's ace this next SAT.